If it is a select statement, you store it in a variable, and whatever is the variable, that variable is an instance of the statement class. So, the steps are very clear cut: load the driver using the driver manager, establish a connection using connection, create a statement using the statement, and execute and get the result with the help of result set. Now, using these 4 steps, you can get the entire picture clear. You have started your journey by loading the driver, and you have ended your journey by getting the data. When you used java.sql.driver manager, you are loading the driver. When you are using java.sql.result set, you are getting the result due to the execution of the SQL statement that is executed after establishing the connection to the database from the front end to the back end. So, these are the basic 4 Java interfaces that are used to connect and get the information from the database, and these are always used except java.sql.statement, which is sparingly used when you are going for other techniques like prepared statement etc., which we will be seeing in the coming up slides. Now, I will be take you through some sample Java code. This code can be executed on your machine provided you fulfill the other requirements like the database is resident on your machine, or you are in a network where the server is having that particular relational database management system usually, and you need to add some top and bottom code to make it executable. But at the same time, after this sample Java code, I am going to take you through 3 sample codes wherein everything is there. You need to just enter them and execute, but you need to take care that you have the appropriate software on your machine. Try. Here I am trying to load the JDBC driver. Try is a keyword in Java, and in case there is an error in this particular block enclosed by try, then it results in an exception. So, you have a block which is enclosed in try, and any problem in try will be resulting in an exception, and the control will be transferred from the try block to the catch block. So, whenever there is a try, you have a corresponding catch. If there are 5 try blocks, you have 5 catch blocks also. It is only to avoid that there is no problem with the program that it crashes altogether, but only the control will be passed whenever there is an error, and what to do when that particular error exists, it depends on the programmer, because he has to tie up that particular appropriate mechanism into the catch block. This is all sample Java code which demonstrates the previous 4 steps which I have mentioned to you. I will be going through each step and will be explaining to you. Class.forName jdbc.odbc.jdbc ODBC Here you are loading the JDBC driver, and what is that JDBC driver? That is nothing but it is a JDBC ODBC bridge. So, in this particular program you are using JDBC ODBC bridge to connect to the database. Next one is okay, fine, you are connecting to the database. What is that database? Is it an SQL Server database or is it an Access database? In this case, it is Microsoft Access. So, string db connect is equal to jdbc.odbc:/MS Access DB. So, here I am connecting to Microsoft Access database. I loaded the driver. I am connecting to the Microsoft Access database. Here I said jdbc:/odbc:/MS Access DB, assuming that particular database is resident on my machine. Suppose that it is resident on the internet in some other country, then your format will change. You have to use http:// and you have to give the path, so that your program, whenever db connect is specified, will be connecting to that particular RDBMS at that particular address. Connect to the database, that is db connect in this case, and return a connection object. So, here what you are doing is you are loading the driver. After loading the driver, you are establishing the connection. Just take it to a real life situation. You have to move from one shore to the other shore. You have a river in the middle. Now, how you will move? First, there are two shores, you have something blank in the middle, you have to just put a bridge and then walk on to that. Now, what is this bridge? A bridge is nothing but it is a connection. So, you have to establish a connection and to where, which database, that is access here. So, you have to know which database you have to connect to, and you should know where that particular database is resident and which technology you have to use. Should you go for a JDBC ODBC driver, or do you need to go for any other JDBC driver? That you have to decide. Know the place where the database is resident, establish a connection. So, here I am establishing a connection with the help of connection class, where I said connection con is equal to driver manager dot get connection dot db connect comma, I have given two double quotes. They are nothing but they are username and password. As you know, in a particular RDBMS also, every user is having his own instance. So, to whose user you are logging in, that you have to specify here. So, in the case of DB connect, you are connecting to a username and that particular username's password are also enclosed. Here I have kept blank things, but at the same time in real life when you are connecting, in case there is no username and password, it is well and good, but in case there is a username and password, apart from specifying that particular database name, you need to specify the username and password also. So, let me once again go through that particular statement. Connection con is equal to driver manager dot get connection db connect comma username comma password. So, the get connection procedure will be taking the name of the database, username and password as parameters, will execute them and then returns a connection object. So, now your front end is ready to connect to the database whose instance is having this particular username and password. Fine. Now, what we have to do? We have connected to the backend from the front end. Yes, a path is available. What is that I have to do on the database? That you have to decide on the basis of the SQL statement. That is what I am doing here. I am trying to get some information from a table called test table. So, test table is resident on the database and I want to see what all data is available in that particular table. So, I am creating an SQL statement select star from test table. This particular query is stored in a string variable called SQLQS. Next, I am trying to create this particular statement on the connection. So, the particular connection class which is having the connection object for that particular instance of the RDBMS will be holding this particular query readily to execute once it gets the instruction. So, here I am moving that particular select star from test table which is placed in the SQLQS to the statement class STMT. So, statement class is denoted by STMT is equal to con dot create statement. So, create statement is holding this particular statement with it and we are saying con because con is nothing but it is an object of connection. So, the connection is holding the statement readily to execute. Execute the SQL statement and return a result set with results. Now, how to execute and how to receive the results? Result set RS is equal to STMT dot execute query SQLQS. We should remember that SQLQS is nothing but a string consisting of that particular SQL query and I am executing that SQL statement with the help of execute query method of statement class. And the most important thing from this statement is once this execute query will execute this particular SQL query, the results of that are placed in RS. RS is nothing but it is an object of result set. So, result set is a class which will be holding the information that is received from the server as a result of the execution of the SQL statement. So, the data you need is there in RS which is nothing but a result set. Once it is in the result set, we have to see it. So, if you have 10 records in a particular table and I have placed a particular SQL select statement and executed it and all the 10 records are in result set. Now, I would like to see what are all those records. For that, we will be using a Boolean variable. It is nothing but it is a pointer to a particular row. As you move from one row to another, your pointer moves. Basically, your pointer always points to the current row, and whatever query you execute, it is that particular row to which the pointer points will be affected. So, if you are having 10 rows, initially it points to the first row. So, here we are saying Boolean more is equal to rs dot next. Initially, we have moved that particular pointer to the first row. Boolean more is equal to rs dot next. Suppose that your table does not have any records at all, then more becomes false, and you are trying to execute what is there inside a table when there is nothing in the table, but at the same time in SQL that does not create a problem. You have a table, there is no data, and you are trying to put some select query on that. So, the answer is null, there is no information, but it is not going to be an error. That is the reason we have started with while loop, while more. So, if more is true, it executes system.out.println call 1 plus rs dot get int call 1. I would like to interpret this particular statement. Rs dot get int call 1, COL is nothing but it is column, and I am specifying the number 1. It just means that in this particular sample Java application, I am trying to see only data which is there in one column of the table. So, if you are having a table with 10 records and 5 fields, each row is having 5 data items, but I am concentrating on only one column of each and every record. So, if it is a name field, I will be getting name in each record in each iteration. Though this is a limitation of this particular program, we will be seeing in the next program how to generalize and get the total information. And once I am getting the data in one column, I am going to the next record by moving the pointer using more is equal to rs dot next. Whenever we reach the end, whenever there is no more rows, it returns false. So, more becomes false. Once more is false, the while loop is quit by the compiler, and you have seen the entire data. Now, let us see, of course, we have already seen the sample Java code which performs the basic operations, but at the same time it is not a self contained program, it is having its own limitations, like it can show you only the data in a single column, it is not showing you data in all the rows of all columns. That we will be seeing in the coming up slides. But the basic thing is 2-tier architecture and the 3-tier architecture, you have to choose one. There are several limitations with the 2-tier architecture, and people are moving to the 3-tier architecture. What is the schematic for the 2-tier architecture? You have a client, you have a server, everything is residing on the server itself. From the client, you are sending the request to the server, and server is responding back to the client. So, it is a two-way communication, client to server, server to client, that is 2-tier architecture, and there are limitations with it, because whenever you are putting heavy loaded database queries, your server is totally busy with executing those queries, and other queries will get very less time. This is just one problem with 2-tier architecture, but when you compare the 2-tier architecture with 3-tier architecture, you have a number of advantages for 3-tier architecture over 2-tier. This is a 3-tier architecture. Here you have a client, you have a server, as it is available in the 2-tier, but at the same time you have one more component here, what is called a database server. If you see, client is communicating with server both ways, server is communicating with database server both ways. To be more specific, that particular server you can label it as a operating system server. But one important thing is, here you do not see any connection between the client and the database server. So, your client cannot connect to the database server directly. In case you need some information which is available on the database server, you have to send it to the operating system server, and operating system server will further communicate it to the database server, and it is operating system server which receives information from the database server and in turn communicates to the client. In this case, what happens is, suppose that I have given a select statement for a very big table, in which gigabytes of data is present, which takes a lot of time for the CPU to execute and get the data. What happens is the server will be just receiving the request and passes on that request to the database server, and database server is busy with executing that particular statement, and the operating system server is free to execute any other instructions that come from the client or other clients. So, your CPU is not kept busy with just one instruction, it is not preoccupied. Whatever occupation is there, it is done by the database server. That is why in 3-tier architecture the applications are very faster, and even maintenance work can be done at the back end without interrupting the application, wherein the communication is between only client and the server. In case that communication is using database server, yes, it is disturbed, but in 2-tier architecture, if you are maintaining something, even in the case of database, there is no communication possible between the client and the server, because it is a 2-tier architecture. Now, how to use JDBC? There are different ways of using JDBC. One is applets. If you are thinking purely from internet programming, one thing which cannot be taken away from internet programming is browser. It is not possible to develop a application without browser if you are planning it onto the internet. Let that browser be anything. Whenever you are using Java, it is applet in the browser which is doing your work. So, applets can be designed which can connect to databases on the server where they are downloaded. So, it just means that your applet is downloaded from a server and your applet can connect only to that server from where it is downloaded. This is a limitation, but that limitation is existent due to various security concerns. The second one is CGI applications using Java. As you know, CGI programming using Perl, C language, C++, etc. is possible. In the case of Java also, CGI programming is possible. So, you can use JDBC even for CGI programming using Java. Next comes 2-tier Java applications, where you have a client and a server. Even in this you can use JDBC to connect to the server. Then you have 3-tier Java applications. Here also you have a client, you have an operating system server, you have a database server. There also you can use JDBC. So, JDBC can be used in 4 different types depending on your application to get data from the database backend. At the same time, we are using an RDBMS which supports SQL, and we are using JDBC to connect to it. The data types in JDBC are Java based, the data types in RDBMS are SQL based. So, there should be a mapping between the SQL data type and JDBC data type. Whenever such mapping is not present, we have to take care by doing programming, so that the mapping is there in place when the data is taken from the server. One important thing here is, whenever you are connecting to the backend using JDBC, and whenever data is brought into the result set, there is no problem. But the only problem is when you are trying to transfer the data from the result set to your variables, because suppose that you have an integer there and you are trying to move it to some other type, there will be an error. But as a matter of precaution, you can always use variables which are character based, so that everything irrespective of its data type will fit in a string. That precaution can be taken, but at the same time there is a mapping from JDBC data type to SQL data type, and they are visible on the slide. The char data type of SQL type is directly corresponding to the string data type on Java. So, you can see char, varchar, numeric, decimal, bit, integer, real, all are mapped to the corresponding Java types. And you also have float, double, binary, date, time, timestamp corresponding to the Java types. So, here there is mapping in most of the cases, and whatever I am showing you, they are limited. There are a number of other data types of SQL that are mapped to the Java types. Only in case you have a problem with accepting that particular mapping, you have to do the necessary programming, and in 99% of the cases no such necessity will arise. Now, I am going to take you to an application where a particular column's values are retrieved. Basically, it is the same application which I have already taken you, but the only difference is here I am putting some code at the top and bottom, so that it can be executed. So, here I am starting with import statements which are mandatory for any Java program. Here I am using SQL package, which means that I am using JDBC, then I am using IO, it means that there are some input output, and I have started with the word class and public static void main string args, which is the first function to be executed by the compiler. So, this is the skeleton code that has to be appended to any application to be executed. Then comes the same code which I have already shown to you. The same code exists except a few lines which I have just shown to you, and the same case you are trying to execute a select statement from a test table and getting the data, and you are executing the query, and the information is placed in the result set, and then you are retrieving it using the get int. Here I am saying rs.getInt because assuming that the column 1 is having integer compatible data, I am using get int. I can use get char, I can use get double, I can use even other get methods, provided I am sure of the data type that particular first column contains. In this case, I am sure that it consists of the data that is compatible with integer data type. And finally, I have a catch. The entire code started with a try block and it is ending with a catch block. Whenever there is a problem in the try block, the control will move to the catch block. Result set metadata class. Here what is happening is I am trying to get both rows and columns, that is all records will be fetched from the database. For that I will be using the class result set metadata. What do we mean by it? An object of result set metadata class is used to determine the characteristics of the result set that has been retrieved. It just means that a result set is nothing but it is a set of rows. Set of rows means set of data items. So, irrespective of their types, we want to see it. So, what are those types? That we can get from the result set metadata class. Using this, we can get the characteristics of the result set. The result set get metadata method is used to determine the result set metadata object. So, to get the properties, you will be using the result set metadata class and result get metadata method. Now, let us go through the Java application that retrieves rows of the table. Again, the code is same, but at the same time there are some differences between the previous code and this one, because here I am trying to get the entire code of rows as well as columns. So, I will just explain to you only at the place where that particular change has been made. If you see the last 3 lines, here I am not taking a table directly, though I am giving test table as the base table from which the SQL queries data is fetched. The user is having an option to give the table name as an argument to the program. So, if there is an argument provided, that particular argument will be treated as a table name, and from that table the data will be collected. On that particular table, once the query is executed, the results are placed in the result set. Here the crucial code starts. Result set metadata RSMD is equal to rs dot get metadata. So, here I am just getting the properties of the data available in the result set class, and I am storing it in RSMD. After that, I am trying to go through each row. Now, I have the entire information. I have information on what type of data is present in the rows. Is the first column integer, is the second column double, or the third column character, whatever it is. The entire data features are placed in the result set metadata object RSMD, and now I can just start trying to get information from that and place it onto the front end. The last statement says for statement where n is less than or equal to RSMD dot get column count. Get column count means how many columns are there in that particular table. So, these are the last 3 lines where we say system.out.println column plus n plus name. The n is used because suppose that you are getting data from the first column, n will be 1. Suppose that you are getting data from the second column, then n will be 2. So, the value of n will be changing whenever you are changing the column, and you are getting the column name and column value. So, if there are 5 columns, for each record, first column first value, second column second value, third column third value, like that. After that row is complete, your second iteration will start, again column 1 data item 1, column 2 data item of that particular record. So, if there are 10 records and 5 columns, you have a total of 50 iterations here, getting all the 50 data items, and all the 50 data items are shown at the front end. This is one way of getting rows and columns data from the database. The other way is prepared statement class. Suppose that I am executing a select statement where I do not want to give the table name. So, it is a generic SQL select statement. The table name is supplied by the customer. To accommodate such features, we use what is called prepared statement class. It allows SQL statement to be prepared with placeholders for the parameters. Usually, these placeholders are question mark character, and they can only be used to create parameters for certain portions of the SQL statement. Many databases do not allow tables and column names to be substituted with parameters. And I have also given you one application which is using this particular concept. So, I will just take you to that particular direct statement and you can have a look at it. See, if you see here, I am having a prepared statement, prep statement is equal to con.prepare statement SQL QS. So, that particular query is containing a question mark character, a wild character. That is why you are using the prepared statement class here, and once it is done, we can substitute values for it. For example, the first question mark will be having the value n, and what is n? N is nothing but it is a variable, and that variable will be assigned values as the application progresses. So, the concept is same again, but at the same time here you will be using what is called prepared statement, and once you moved from that particular point, let us say here I am saying prepared statement dot set int 1 comma n. 1 means first wildcard character, first question mark will be substituted by n, and for n you can give any value. So, your particular query is executed after substituting that value for n, and the entire result is available in the result set. Since you are trying to get both rows and columns data, you can use result set metadata class again to get the information. Again the code is same, the top and bottom code always remains static, only in the middle wherever you want to maintain changes or the technique, that particular code is changed so that it reflects that particular technique. Okay, so, the final statement is rs dot get string of n. Finally, you have a catch block which is trying to catch any errors that are rising due to the errors in the try block.